Hi, my name is David Rippy. I am a certified hypnotherapist. This is the chapter Josiah Recounts More Miracles of Jesus and the Future of Mankind in my book, Meeting Jesus. Enjoy.
Josiah recounts more miracles of Jesus and the future of mankind. This female client returned for a second past life regression to get more details about her past life as a man named Josiah living in Nazareth at the same time as Jesus. It was such an interesting life she recounted the first time that we both decided to explore that life again. As mentioned in an earlier chapter, the client did not grow up in a Christian household or in a family with any religious affiliation. The hypnotic induction was left out to avoid repetition. David, I want you to drift down, deeper and deeper. You feel your mind's eye opening up to explore old experiences, finding yourself drifting back to a familiar time in your past. Can you do that? Subject, yes. David, let's go back to your life as Josiah. I want you to drift down deeper and deeper and go back to that life. I want you to visualize where you lived. Subject, I was in this stone and clay building. It was my house. David, were you married? Subject, I was married, but she passed away and I had no children. I worked both with stone and blacksmith type stuff. David, you're drifting down, deeper and deeper. I want the memories to grow stronger as you recount your life as Josiah. You mentioned you knew Jesus in that life. Is that true? Subject, right. David, you mentioned a few things in the past. I want you to go to a time that you remember when Jesus shared some of his greatest teachings, something you witnessed that stood out in your mind. Can you take me to that time, to that location? Subject, him and I are sitting, in this grassy rolling hills field, and it's a sunny day, it is nice out. We're sitting and he's counseling me, and I'm telling him how I feel sometimes like there's no purpose, and it's hard to keep living, and I feel confused. He's telling me he wants to show me things, and that I have things within me that I have to wake up. He's saying that I have everything that he has. He's doing energy work on me with his hands a couple feet away from my heart. And we're sitting and he's facing me, and his right hand is raised up over my heart, and we're sitting on the ground facing each other, and his left hand is facing up to the sky, and his right hand is held out in front of my chest, and there's like this bubble, this vortex of energy around us, and he's putting something into me, like a healing of sorts. David, describe that feeling. What was it like? Was he taking away your doubt and uncertainty about life? Subject, it felt like a warm liquid going into my heart, and then it was like extreme peace and a total release, and letting go of tension and anything I was holding inside of me. It was like a warm liquid was washing it all away, and I started feeling really warm and relaxed and he was saying that he could teach me how to do that, and that he has different talks with different groups, where he teaches others how to tap into that energy, and he was saying that there's a lot of people that are afraid of it, and think that they're afraid of it, and it makes them angry. David, wow, that's interesting. He made you feel at peace. Was this in Nazareth or in another location? Subject, it's a village that starts with a J like J-O something. David, like J-O, any third or fourth letter you can see? Subject, well, there's a river by it and I'm not sure. I can see it, what it looks like. David, are there people around the river? Subject, people would wash their clothes there and get water from there. David, how far from Nazareth was the river? Subject, I'm getting like 20 miles. David, about 20 miles. Did Jesus show you this alone, or were there others around when he showed you this energy healing? Subject, it was just him and I at that point, and other times there's circles or groups. David, did you follow him from village to village, and how close of friends were you? I'm sure he was busy, is that correct? Subject, right. Sometimes he would be away for a long time, and I felt abandoned and sad. David, now when he came back to Nazareth, were other people glad to see him as well? Subject, yes, a lot of people. There were celebrations and everybody made music, and everyone was very happy and celebrated him coming back. David, did you ever meet any of the disciples? Subject, some of them. I didn't always see them all together, but some of them would go with him on certain, different travels. Sometimes he would take some of them with him. David, do you remember any of the names of the disciples he may have taken with him? The ones that came through Nazareth when you were there? Subject, I think I had some jealousy or animosity towards them. I felt like. David, did you want to be a disciple? Subject, I wanted to be closer, as close to Jesus as they were, but Jesus said I wasn't ready. David, you were ambitious and believed in what he did, and wanted to travel with him more, I guess. Right? Subject, yes, and I felt so good when he was around. I felt like there was hope, like there was meaning to life, and then when he'd go away, and he'd be away for a long time, I felt restless and lost, and there was no point to anything. David, Jesus had an amazing ability to bring out the best in others, and bring hope to people. Subject, right. David, describe another village that you may have gone to where Jesus was, where you may have witnessed a miracle or a healing. I know you mentioned a 4-year-old boy in our first session. Was there anything else you witnessed? Subject, he could purify water. At different times there was not enough clean water for people to drink. He could take water that was not drinkable and turn it into something that people could drink. And, even puddles that were on the ground, he could make them turn into something that wouldn't kill you if you drank it. He was doing healing work on different bodies of water, like rivers. And he had this wooden staff that he would put into the water that would charge it, like through different energy systems. David, that would cleanse the water? Subject, yes. David, did you ever witness him levitate or walk on water? Did you ever get a chance to see something like that? Subject, David, was it more healing type things? Subject, yes, it was. There were. People would talk a lot and say they saw him do this or that, but I only saw him heal things like water or people or illnesses, but I didn't see, anything like levitating or turning water into wine or anything like that. David, did you ever see him cure blindness? Subject, well, there was a boy that when he was holding him, the boy's eyes were white. It looked like they were rolled in the back of his head, like something was wrong with his eyes, and it seemed like he wasn't cognitively all there. I guess he was mentally impaired, and Jesus sat him on his lap and had his hand over his eyes and over his forehead. I watched as he slowly brought his hand down over the boy's forehead, wiping it over his face and saying things, and at one point the boy stood up from Jesus' lap, and his eyes were different. I think he had brown eyes, and he looked really confused, like he was a new person. David, amazing. How did the village react, and how did you feel when you saw that take place? Subject, my heart was beating fast. It was like seeing something that's long pause, totally unbelievable. My heart was beating, and I was sweating. David, how was the rest of the village reacting? Subject, there was a lot of noise and a lot of commotion and talking, and a lot of people trying to touch the boy. Some people were taking him away to keep him from being smushed by people. David, did you ever see Jesus cure leprosy or work with anybody that had physical deformities? Subject, he would spend a lot of time. Pause, there were these buildings that had sick people in them, lepers and other people with flesh-eating diseases. They are like hospices, and he would spend a lot of time in there praying, talking and meditating and being there. He had a lot of things to say about what went on in there. I never went in there. David, he helped a lot of people in these buildings? Subject, yes, he was telling the people who owned or who ran the buildings, he was telling them things about what happened and how disease can be avoided. David, that sounds very helpful. I want you to drift down deeper and deeper as you're witnessing miracles. Are there any other things that Jesus did that come to mind that were astonishing? I'm sure he did things all the time that were amazing. Tell me something that stands out to you that you remember. Subject, he could control the weather and move clouds in on long pause. He could control the brightness and dimness of the sun and make it rain or stop raining and parting of clouds. Trailing off. David, did you witness him do this? Subject, yes. David, that's incredible. So, you witnessed Jesus make the sun dimmer and then brighter again? Subject, yes. He would go to a hill and he had a wooden staff, and he would do certain movements almost like dancing, but it looked like qigong somewhat. He was able to create a vortex of energy around his body and center it into his staff, and the staff could send beams of light commands to different elements in nature, that could part clouds and cause clouds that were normal clouds to turn into rain clouds. David, that must have been something to see. What else did he talk about? Tell me about the messages he gave. Did you witness any of those, any sermons or anything? Subject, long pause. He wanted people to gather together and to be grateful and, long pause, to give thanks and to honor life. And he said there's a lot of power in that, and strongly encouraged people not to miss, to do this every day, and to not miss coming and gathering with people to express gratitude. David, that's powerful and moving. How old was he when this was taking place? Subject, he was 30-something. David, were you about the same age? Subject, a tiny bit younger. David, when you traveled to these villages where you knew Jesus was present, was he with disciples most of the time? Did he ever travel alone, or was it mostly with others? Subject, he usually had at least one or two. David, did you ever see Mary Magdalene? Subject, softly, yes. David, did you ever meet her? Subject, long pause. David, did you ever remember seeing her somewhere? Subject, pause. I saw her but never really communicated with her. David, was she around him a lot? Subject, yes, they loved each other. David, they loved each other. Tell me about the disciples. What disciples were around Jesus more than others? Subject, long pause. It seems like someone like a Thomas or something with a T. David, go on. Subject, and, long pause, someone with a J. David, when Jesus was going around village to village, would he be gone for long periods? Subject, yes, and he liked to spend time. He did a lot of work, and he liked to spend time where people didn't know where he was. He liked to be alone sometimes. David, did he ever share anything about the other side with you, what the Christian faith knows as heaven? Did he ever mention what it was like after living on earth and passing away? Did he ever say anything about that? Subject, long pause. He talked about, how to bring a place called heaven to earth, how to bring the light and the power into us, so that we become it, long pause. David, did that make you feel good when you heard that? Subject, yeah, there's a place that's not, there's a place that exists that can only be reached through finding it within ourselves. David, he was a strong believer in meditation and prayer and things like this. Subject, right. David, did a lot of his lessons resonate with people? Did people start adapting to what he was saying in the surrounding area and further away? Subject, yes, there was a lot of people who were saying that they found a new way of life, and that the old way was obsolete and pointless. David, when the information Jesus was sharing was becoming more well-known, were there more Roman soldiers around? Subject, there were some that were always watching, that had like a presence, like one or two would be standing in corners watching. They had like weapons, not all the time, but sometimes they would be in our town for a time, and then they would leave. David, they came and went and kept an eye on things? Subject, right. David, as you're getting older, I presume his word was starting to spread more and more, as the crowds grew around him. Were you aware of what he was doing now, that he was becoming more well-known? Subject, it's hard to. I keep seeing him at this river, with like his wooden staff in the water. Pause. It's hard to get away from that image. David, tell me about that image. He put his staff in the water and then what? Subject, there was like waves of, like electrical current coming through the staff and into the water. It was sending like vibration into it. Long pause, and it was, renewing it and making it less. It had become polluted by different things from the village and from different pollutants, and all the fish had been dying, and he spent like 6 weeks, in healing the river. David, so he spent a lot of time healing the river? Subject, right. David, were there a lot of things that had to be done to get the river back to where it was originally? Subject, right. David, did the fish come back and start thriving after Jesus healed it? Subject, yes. David, the village, was it mostly a fishing village? The village needed that river? Subject, yeah, we couldn't survive without the river. David, I presume upon healing the river, everyone that relied on that river was thankful to Jesus? Subject, right. David, that's interesting. Did you witness Jesus putting his staff in the water and healing the river? Subject, excitedly, yeah. He stayed there for like day and night and day and night. David, did you go down by the river and say, hey, how's it going? How's the river coming? Subject, matter of fact, he wouldn't talk to anybody. He was very concentrated. David, Jesus was very focused, and everyone left him alone? Subject, people would come and watch, and they were, respectful but curious and didn't get too close, but would come and watch what he was doing. And there were people who didn't believe anything would happen, and people who believed that it would, and it was like a waiting, like everyone was in suspense while he was working there. David, in admiration, isn't that something? So when it finally healed, did they say, well, there are more fish and the water appears pure? Subject, yes, you could see, it was completely different. David, that must have been something to witness. Let's go on to other villages, and as you drift down farther and farther, did you witness any other miracles or any other things that he might have said or done that were impressive to you? Subject, there were times when he seemed he could disappear, not just disappear, but it was like he could walk through a door that you could not see, and long pause, it's hard to describe, but there was an invisible place where he could slip into. David, you would see him disappear? Subject, yes. You would see him and then he'd be gone. David, that's amazing. Subject, he would walk straight ahead and then disappear right in front of you. David, wow. Did you ever see him do that? Subject, sounding proud, yes. David, was it mind-boggling to watch somebody suddenly disappear? Subject, well, me and other people would try to feel it. David, try to feel where he disappeared to? Subject, right. David, but there was nothing there. Subject, there was nothing there, but on the ends of our fingers there was prickles like electricity. David, you could feel that from the area where he would disappear? Subject, right. David, how long would that electricity, that tingling feeling last? Would it last for a while or disappear quickly? Subject, just a short amount of time. David, then it was gone like nothing was there. Subject, right. David, did you ever see him reappear? Subject, yes. David, so Jesus could appear out of nowhere? Subject, sometimes he would come out of a big hill, right out of the side of it, or a tree. David, you saw him walk out of a tree? Subject, right. David, did you ever see him walk out of the side of a building? Subject, no. David, did he ever say where he would go when he disappeared? Subject, he said he would go to his Father. David, Jesus was able to move from one dimension to another. Subject, right. David, did everyone accept Jesus after witnessing everything he had done? What was the general feeling? Subject, yes, there was a mix between not being sure how to trust him, and then a mix of complete devotion, and just complete devotion. David, did you ever witness or see, were the disciples around sometimes, or did you ever meet his mother, Mother Mary? Did you ever meet her in Nazareth or ever see her anywhere? Subject, I never saw her. David, you never saw her. Did you ever meet any of Jesus' brothers? Subject, no. David, you were aware of some of his disciples. You saw Mary Magdalene. Subject, right. David, did you ever see John the Baptist? Is that the J you were thinking of? Subject, I'm not sure. David, okay. Subject, I can describe what he looked like, but I don't know. David, what did he look like? How would you describe him? Subject, he had a dark brown, shorter beard like close to his face, and he had a roundish face, and he was like on the shorter side, and he wore, a lot of light-colored clothing, but at night when it was cooler out he had a cloak, like a thick brown cloak. Long pause, I don't know. David, did he seem like Jesus' older brother or cousin? What was his relationship to Jesus? Subject, he seemed somehow related. David, did you ever see Judas, Matthew, Mark, or Luke? Subject, it's hard to remember that. I don't know. David, hard to remember who Jesus was with. Subject, right. David, can you see his last days before he was taken prisoner? Subject, long pause, yes, he, looked very pained and sad, and like he knew what was going to happen. David, when was the last time you saw Jesus, do you remember? Subject, pause. He was going to travel somewhere, and it was far away, and I didn't know what to do. He had to go somewhere and I wanted to go, but I waited a long time, and I decided I couldn't stay where I was, and there was a group of people who were going to leave, because there was something bad happening to our village, and I didn't know if I should stay to try to protect it, or if I should go with him. I was confused and I waited for a while, but then a group of people were leaving, and I went with them to follow Jesus. David, how far away was he? Subject, pause. I think he was quite far away. It would be a long travel to get there. David, you went and traveled with a group. How many people were in the group? Subject, there were around 40 or 50 people. David, did you bring animals along and did families come as well? Subject, I see us walking barefoot with not much but what's on our backs. David, describe that journey as you're walking. Did you camp at night? Did you bring food with you? How did you survive? Subject, we had bread and some small things, but it didn't seem like we had a lot of provisions. David, you didn't have much with you but clothes. Subject, right. David, everyone is walking barefoot in the desert. What are you walking on? Subject, it's not very comfortable. I'm not sure, it's like stones and sticks and stones, and I'm not sure where I am. Soft laugh. David, why didn't you have sandals on your feet? Were your feet used to walking on rough surfaces? Subject, I'm not sure, but everybody's barefoot. David, how many days did it take you to get to where you were going? Did you make it to Jesus, or had he already been taken prisoner, and it was too late? Subject, I remember there being a very bad storm. There was a lot of wind and it's dark and there's a lot of rain that's heavy and coming down hard, and something like a river that overflows, and it's like a big rush of water, almost like a hurricane. There's a lot of water and I don't think I made it out. David, did you feel this was a flash flood, or something like that? Subject, right. David, you were on this march to see Jesus. Do you feel you might have died in that storm? Subject, yes. David, now if you died in that storm, how did you have a chance to witness Jesus later on when he was captured by the Roman soldiers? How did you witness all that? Subject, I think I died after he was captured and crucified. I think that I just witnessed my own death now. I know I died after he was captured, and I was on my way home after his crucifixion. Author's note, subject had stated in an earlier regression recounting her life as Josiah that she had witnessed Jesus' death and his carrying of the cross. I wanted to clarify whether the death scene she recounted by drowning had happened after Jesus was crucified. David, so you were on your way to Jesus. Afterward, you were heading back home after you witnessed his death, is that right? Subject, well, Jesus was on a hill, on a cross. There were lines and lines of people waiting to have a moment with him. And some people would spit and say their words and different things, and other people would pray and cry and bow and leave flowers and different things there. David, how long did you wait in line? Subject, it was 3 days and 2 nights. David, how many days did it take for everyone to say their goodbyes? How long did that take? Subject, it was about 2 weeks, but he had already been taken off the cross and placed in the tomb. The people still wanted to see where he was crucified and pay their respects. David, people waited outside for up to 2 weeks. Were the lines miles long? Subject, yes, it was miles long, and more people would come from other places to join the line. David, to join the line. Subject, right. David, that must have been a horrible thing to see. Was Mary Magdalene there, or anybody else that you might recognize? Anyone that traveled with Jesus that might have been there with him? Long pause. Who might have been there besides Roman soldiers? Subject, I just see Jesus on the cross and people coming to have their time with him. David, let's go back in time. We'll go back right before he was taken. When did you hear that Jesus was taken by Roman soldiers? Were you on the road at the time? Subject, it was common knowledge. Everyone was talking about it. And I heard it, somebody else told me, and everybody knew. David, when you found out, what was your first reaction? How did you feel when you learned that Jesus had been taken? Subject, I felt my heart pounding, and I felt fear and anger, and like it was not fair, and it was so bad that it couldn't be true. David, at the time you heard this, where did you go from there? How far away were you from where he was taken? Subject, it was like a 5-day walk from where he was. David, did you decide to go where he was taken? Tell me about that. Subject, I put some food and some other things in my bag. Pause, and there were other people, many different groups of people, and I joined one of the groups and walked. And you could see other groups that were ahead of us in the distance walking. David, wow. So, a lot of groups were heading in the direction where Jesus was taken. You said it was a 5-day journey. Did you talk about Jesus on the way? What did you talk about? Subject, a lot of people cried, and other people said that he would survive, and that he told us that this would happen, and to not fear for him. David, everyone had a good idea what would take place because Jesus already shared that this would happen someday. It was common knowledge that Jesus said that he would be taken. Subject, right. David, this was not a surprise to him or others? Subject, right, and he said that it had to happen. David, you're all on the road, some are crying, others are talking. What were your thoughts? What did you feel inside intuitively? Subject, I felt like he would be okay, and I felt that he would not die, and that he would be able to heal himself. And I was angry because I knew he could, and he didn't. David, you felt that after witnessing what Jesus had done, his miracles, his ability to disappear when he wanted to, that you knew he could have saved himself if he wanted. Subject, I was angry that he could, and he didn't. David, you were angry that he could save himself and he didn't. I guess he already said it was going to happen, his capture, but not his death. Subject, right. David, I guess with his disciples he shared that he would not be here forever, right? Subject, right. David, Jesus certainly had the ability to save himself, and you were mad that he didn't. That's what you're telling me, right? Subject, I was angry that he was bleeding, and that he was so close to death, and that he was putting himself through that. David, right, the fact that he was putting himself through all the torture before his eventual death. Subject, right. David, describe when you saw him. You mentioned something about the cross. Tell me about that. Subject, he was naked and it was very grotesque. There was a lot of blood, old blood and new blood. And there was a lot of sweat, and he looked very pale and his skin looked diseased and he looked like he was dead. David, very softly, did he look emaciated? Subject, he looked like a skeleton. David, how long was it from the time he was captured to when you saw him carrying the cross? Subject, it was like 30 days. David, he was confined for 30 days, you think, is that correct? Subject, right. David, over that time period, over that 30 days he was treated badly? Subject, right. David, that was the general feeling among everyone? Subject, yes, he was made fun of, beaten and tortured. David, with dismay. Take us to that time when Jesus was taken out of captivity to when he was carrying the cross. Subject, he came out of this building with like a wooden door that opened with a lever. The wood door opened from the bottom up. And then he came out and was holding the cross on his back, and he was shaking and dripping blood and sweat. And he looked up at all of the people, and there were whips that were cracking, and he was walking and dragging the cross behind him. David, how big was this cross that Jesus dragged? Subject, it was very large. It was much bigger than he was. David, were the soldiers hitting him with whips while he was dragging the cross? Subject, they whipped him if he would stop. David, if he didn't stop, they just made him keep going? Subject, yes. David, tell me about the crowd's reaction. What do you remember? Subject, there was a lot of tension, a lot of differences of sides, anger, confusion, and pain, and a lot of energy that was there. David, you said they held Jesus for 30 days. Did everyone else think it was 30 days? The time period seems longer than what was shared in the Bible. So Jesus, based on your recollection, wasn't only arrested, he was tried and tortured for close to 30 days, and then he carried the cross. Subject, yes. David, was anyone allowed to see him when he was held in captivity? Was anyone granted permission to see him during that time? Subject, some people could see him. David, who were they? Were they disciples? Mother Mary? Mary Magdalene? Who would get to see Jesus? Subject: Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary were not allowed to go. Only men could go. David: Any particular men you remember? Any names? Subject: I don't know, but it was only a couple of them at a time. After a time nobody could go. David: So you wanted to go see him, however, you were not allowed, correct? Subject: Right. David: What did everyone do during the time of his captivity? Subject: People held different circles of prayer, and some held different meetings on how to save him, and others would say that he would save himself. And there was a lot of sadness. David: There were daily and nightly rituals for him? Subject: Right. Candles and burning different plants. David: What were all the Roman soldiers doing? Were they standing guarding, making sure nobody could get to him? Subject: Right. David: Were there any attempts to try and rescue him? Subject: Yeah, and they were all killed. David: So there were several attempts to free him? Subject: Right. David: And none were successful? Subject: Tearfully, no. David: Tell me about the largest rescue attempt that you heard of, where you thought there was a chance of success to save Jesus. Were there any particular groups that you thought could have a chance to pull it off? Subject: I'm not sure. Everybody was getting killed. David: How many groups tried over that 30-day period? Subject: There were a lot of groups that tried, but after a time not as much. David: After a lot of groups were killed that tried to free Jesus, did the rest of the people start to realize that rescuing him was not possible? Subject: Right. David: When you saw him carrying the cross, did a lot of people try to help him along the way? Subject: Some people tried, but they were whipped down or pushed when they tried to be close to him. David: Did you follow him as he was carrying the cross, or was it too crowded and you had to stay in one spot? Subject: There were too many people. David: Was it a mob scene at that point? Were the Roman soldiers trying to keep everyone in line? Does it seem the path that Jesus took when he carried the cross was the path that is mentioned in the Bible? What does your heart tell you? Subject: What do you mean? David: In other words, today there is a certain path that they claim Jesus carried the cross. In your mind's eye, does the path where he carried the cross the true path, or was there another one? Subject: I see a path, and I do see a hill, and I see a lot of other hills behind it. David: Is the path where Jesus carried the cross accurate? Subject: It's not like cut and dry, it's not like it's hard to describe. David: Let's look at that scene after Jesus passed. When you left that location, did you go back to your village afterward? Subject: I didn't go back. I left. David: Go on. Subject: I was seeking something to follow because I felt very lost. David: Did you feel like you had picked up Jesus' teachings, or were you not sure what to do with your life at that point? Subject: I was very unsure. David: How long did you live in that life? Subject: I remember dying in water from something that hit me. David: Was that the flood that you told us about earlier when you saw your death scene? Subject: Yes. David: So after Jesus passed, you left, went out into the desert, and died in a flood storm. Is that correct? Subject: Yes. David: Reflect on that. You're drifting down deeper and deeper. It was a sad moment for you when you died, but you were lucky to have witnessed miraculous and amazing things by Jesus. You were happy you had that life, I presume? Subject: Yes. David: Looking back, you saw yourself dying in a flood. You're drifting down deeper and deeper. You're going to let all those sad memories drift away. You had an opportunity to meet Jesus. At your moment of death, tell me what you see. Subject: Long pause. There's darkness and a purple diamond shape in front of me. And I go through the diamond shape and I'm in a place with, a very wide marble staircase that's going up. David: Tell me about that marble staircase. Where does it lead? Subject: There's a lot of different purple energy around, and after going up the stairs for a while, there's pods or small rooms that have different beings in them. David: Tell me about that. Who are these beings? Subject, they are ascended masters and interdimensional beings and archangels. David, let's stop there for a moment. You're in this building? Subject, it's not enclosed. It's in darkness and space. It's suspended, it's like there are no walls or ceiling. David, now you said it's a purplish light? Subject, I can see the darkness of the space all around, but I can see everything clearly, and there's a tinge of purple everywhere. David, interesting. Tell me about the ascended masters. Who do you recognize that is known today? Subject, I see Lord Shiva and Archangel Raphael, Kuan Yin, and at the top there are 3 thrones, deep concentration, and Jesus is on the top right. On the left there's these 2 I can't see them clearly. There are these 2 beings, one in the center and one on the left side. David, Jesus is on the right as you're facing him, and you have these 2 other beings, though you're not quite sure who you're looking at. You're drifting down deeper and deeper, and you are going to connect more with this scene. Who else might be there? Subject, long pause. The middle one itself is the Supreme Creator, consciousness with no real form or anything. And on the left is a very like jungle, nature, animal feeling. David, how very interesting. What do you look like? How do you appear? Subject, long pause. I feel like I'm a ball of light, with a million different faces. David, as you look around, you mentioned there were archangels. Can you describe Raphael to me? What does he look like? Subject, he has long blonde hair, and he's very happy and joyful and very muscular, and he has very large wings. He's emanating this lime green energy. David, that sounds nice. What does Lord Shiva look like? Subject, he's blue, and he's wearing a lot of gold and red, and he's very powerful. He's wise and knowledgeable. David, let's look around the room for other ascended masters and archangels. Subject, it seems like every room is filled with another deity or ascended master. It's unlimited. David, there's a lot of archangels and ascended masters throughout this area? Subject, yes. David, it's a much higher dimension? The dimension below creator consciousness or God? Subject, yes. David, is this dimension one you are familiar with? How did you come here of all places? Subject, this a place where I go to design my soul's path. David, did you sit down with any counselors or spirit guides that helped you design your soul's path? Who helps you? Subject, it's the 3 at the top. David, you have Jesus on the right, Supreme Creator in the middle, and an animal totem nature being on the other side. Subject, right. David, where is Archangel Michael? Do you see him anywhere? Subject, he comes when you call him. David, can you call Michael over? Subject, yes. David, good, I am going to have Michael stand next to us. What does he look like? Subject, he has really nice chestnut hair. And he's very tall, bigger than a human, and he's dressed in blue, with white and golden wings. David, does he have any messages for you? Anything to say? Subject, he says to be aware and to protect my energy all the time. Not to let it flow so freely. David, that sounds like good advice. Do you see any other archangels or ascended masters? Subject, I see Kuan Yin. David, tell me about him. Subject, well, Kuan Yin is a woman. David, how would you spell her name? Subject, very slowly and in deep thought, Quanyin. Author's note, I had no idea who this deity was. Kuan Yin, alone among Buddhist gods, is loved rather than feared, and is the model of Chinese beauty. Regarded by the Chinese as the goddess of mercy, she was originally male until the early part of the 12th century, and has evolved since that time from her prototype Avalokitesvara. David, tell me about her. Subject, she sits cross-legged and levitating, with purple and blue silky-looking garb on. She has a lot of different jewels around her neck. She's smiling and emanating pure love. David, what's her skin color? Subject, it's like a bronze. It's soft and tan. Yes, she seems Asian. David, is this where you go after you pass? Subject, yes. David, you said you came here to work on your next soul path? Subject, it's where I decide where I'm going next, how I want to advance, or if I want to advance. David, what do you have to do to get to the next level? Subject, to become closer to the truth, and to the beings I'm here with, how to become closer to them. David, there are certain requirements and certain tests you must pass. Is that right? Subject, right. David, during your life as Josiah you met Jesus. Now you see him on the throne. How does he look compared to before? Subject, he looks very happy and there's not a single mark on him, and he's dressed in all white, and he looks very relaxed and at peace. David, tell me about the being in the middle, the Supreme Creator. How does he present himself? Subject, it's more of a presence, not that there's empty space there, it's filled but there's no, physical form. David, very interesting. Subject, I come here because in one of my lives I had a shift in consciousness where I decided I wanted to become immortal, and with deciding that I agreed to basically pause and long sigh. I don't know how to describe it, but I agreed to never die. I agreed to be born again. Basically, eternally and forever. David, do you find that a lot of people go through the reincarnation cycle to evolve to higher dimensions? Subject, a lot of people and more now than ever before become immortal, but some humans have died and not come back. David, they decided not to reincarnate again? Subject, their energy has returned to something else. David, they decided not to take human form and advance further. Subject, right. David, their choice. Subject, yeah. David, how often are you given that choice? Subject, it's only a choice once, you can't. Trailing off. David, it's a choice only once, and if you decide to come back, you will reincarnate. You will continue to come back in other lives and evolve. Subject, right. David, that's very interesting. If you choose not to come back, your energy goes back and joins the source or creator consciousness? Subject, yes. It becomes a part of everything, pause. It adds to the matter and to the energy of everything that is. David, that makes sense. Interesting. Were you happy in the life as Josiah? What would you change in that life if you had a choice? Author's note, this reminds me of other past life regression sessions where some clients recounted a life as a Native American Indian. In all cases, upon death, their soul would scatter and return to nature and become a part of everything. If the choice is not to be immortal, the soul's energy returns to the collective whole. Subject, pause. I would have let go of my anger and trust more. David, you were happy you knew Jesus. Subject, yeah. David, when you went back to the other side, you realized that everything worked out the way it was supposed to. Now he's back to where he was before his life as Jesus. You feel his message resonated far and wide? Subject, pause. Yes, it's a feeling or thought that anything is possible from that lifetime. It's a returning home. It's like waking up from a dream. It's like being able to have an entire lifetime in one daydream. It's like a download or informational thing, and then you open your eyes and you're somewhere else again. It's an acceptance of a new life and then you go back. David, you leave all your emotions behind when you return from that life. Subject, it's as if you're there and when you shut your eyes, you see your whole lifetime suddenly flash before you and then you open your eyes and just accept it, without judgment. Then you close your eyes and have another daydream, soft laugh. David, yes, interesting. Let's leave this place now. Are there any ascended masters when you come out of this space? Perhaps Buddha or Confucius? Lao Tzu or anyone else? Author's note, Lao Jia, also known as Lao Tzu and Lao Tse, was an ancient Chinese philosopher and writer. He is the reputed author of the Tao Te Ching, the founder of philosophical Taoism, and a deity in religious Taoism and traditional Chinese religions. Subject, I see, Egyptian things, pharaohs and different. David, you see pharaohs on this higher level? Subject, yeah. David, any names that come to mind? Subject, I'm not sure. David, but you know they are pharaohs from Egypt's past. Subject, right. David, were there any other beings? You said there were other beings before. Any beings that are extraterrestrial and look different than the human form? Subject, there's, pause, Hippocrates was there and trailing off. David, I don't think he was an alien, but maybe he was. He's there, huh? Subject, right. His being or his essence is there, but under the understanding that this is not a place for extraterrestrials in the physical. This is more like the Earth plane. Extradimensional beings can enter, extraterrestrials can't. David, interesting. I want you to take it all in, take all the images in. Remember everything you see. As you leave the area, I want you to see if you can bring that dimension here. I want to bring in Jesus and Michael. Can you do that? And Raphael? Subject, yes. David, tell me when you see them in the room. Subject, quickly, they're all here. David, now that they are all here, how do you present yourself? Do you present yourself as you are now? Subject, I'm just me. David, how does Jesus present himself? How big? Is he as tall as he was in Nazareth or taller? Subject, they take up the whole room. David, their energy is big enough and powerful enough to fill the room if they desire. Subject, right. David, what are the colors of the energies they emit? Subject, I see green and purple and blue energies mixed with white and gold. David, let's ask them a few questions. Is that okay? Subject, yes. David, how do they think Earth is doing? Do they think mankind is moving in the right direction? Subject, long pause. There's a big agreement that everything is okay, soft laugh, just that we're coming up to a big changeover. A big tipping point. David, tell me about that. What do you mean by a tipping point? What's going to take place? Subject, something like a timeline, and we're a centimeter away from, over such a long amount of time, we're being pushed through this gateway, a big shift of consciousness, and once we go over, the line that crosses the timeline and we are very close to it, it's like time stops and then starts over again. David, is it similar to what the Mayans thought about December 21st, 2012, when they thought we shifted and entered a new age? Edgar Cayce talked about entering a new time period starting in 1998, and there would be a new dawning. Is that what you're referring to? Subject, right. David, do you feel they are referring to the age of Aquarius? Subject, yes. We are on that timeline where Earth and humanity meet right there, right now. David, are we going to get over that line? What does it look like going forward into the future? Subject, it's different. I literally see an eraser on a whiteboard erasing everything on the whiteboard, and then something very small is being drawn and growing larger. David, does that mean all of us will experience a physical death, or will it just be a change? Will there be those that are aware and those that are not aware of this change, or will we all be aware? Subject, it's all of us or none of us. David, are we moving in the right direction in their opinion? Are we going to get to that point, and will it be better than it is now? How can we compare it? In what ways will it be different? Subject, humans are evolving out of. Pause in deep thought, we're eventually evolving out of physical form, and we're becoming more conscious beings, and we're becoming merged with our technology, and pause, we won't be staying on Earth. David, is that because Earth will become more uninhabitable? How far out? Subject, pause, I see 200 years. David, you feel that within 200 years we might be making efforts to evolve from Earth. Will there be more space exploration? Subject, I see in 200 years from now no humans on Earth. David, so no humans on Earth in 200 years. Would that be from cataclysms? What would get us to leave Earth and migrate to another planet? What do you see? Subject, we will be travelers, so we'll be on many different planets. David, within 200 years you see this being probable? Subject, yes. David, why would we abandon Earth? Why would we do that? Subject, long pause. David, you don't see Earth still operating like a giant classroom? Subject, long pause, I don't know, it's confusing, soft laugh. David, so within 200 years we should be doing more space travel where we are colonizing other planets? Subject, right, and things are more, pause, energetic and less physical. David, do you see us melding in 200 years where we will have the ability to keep our physical bodies alive, or at least have the ability to transfer our minds into other bodies? Is that the sense you get? Subject, right. We won't really need physical bodies, certainly not to eat or. Trailing off. David, will we be a mix of man and machine? Subject, quickly, yes. Less machine, but more technology. David, will we still be in a biological suit like we're in now, but it will be more reinforced and stronger due to the technology involved? Subject, some are, but some are not exactly physical. David, so, some might be more like a robot in a sense? Subject, not like a machine, almost like a hologram. David, oh I see, the consciousness may be similar to a hologram, but not housed in a physical form. Will that consciousness need to be provided energy to function? Subject, long pause, yes. I see groups of people, and they're see-through, and they're in circles sitting together and sharing energy and gathering energy from a source. David, 200 years in the future, what seems to be the prevalent form of spirituality at that time? Is there still a segregated mix of different spiritualities and religions like today? Subject, I see that all humans are transcended from physical form and transcended from separateness and from ego. David, these changes will take place? Subject, right. David, you don't see any more world wars, holocausts, or anything like that in the future? Subject, nothing will be like it is right now. David, a more peaceful time 200 years from now? Subject, yes. David, would that be because Jesus came back and others to try and change the mindset or cultures we live in now? Subject, enough people transcended the consciousness to a high enough level that we can become evolved enough to be on the same level as Jesus. David, when we all treat others equally with compassion and love, and not fight or bicker over silly things, we'll be closer to that time. Subject, right. David, that's interesting. Looking at today and going forward, will we transcend to where we are no longer as biological? Subject, right. David, is that because something wiped us out? Why would we shed our biological bodies? Is it because our bodies grow old, suffer from disease or illnesses and eventually die? Subject, long pause and thought, I just see a big mix of different forces and chaos, and I see a dark shadow on the earth, and then I see different points of light, and I see the light overtaking the whole earth and trailing off. David, is this light coming from a higher dimension or is this extraterrestrial? Where is this light coming from? Subject, it comes from within humans. David, you see this light shining brighter in humans over time? Subject, right. David, is that their level of consciousness evolving? Subject, yeah. David, does it get to that tipping point where there's enough humans growing in awareness and consciousness that it tips the scale to where the whole world is enveloped in this new world change? Subject, right. David, is there anything else you want to tell me about this time? Subject, paused in thought. David, is it a time to look forward to? Subject, it's a time we should be prepared for, and we need to prepare all of the coming generations. David, prepare them for what? That this change is coming, and we can look forward to it if we're prepared and treat each other equally? What else do we need to do? Subject, teach them to find the light that's within all of us and turn it on. David, the more beacons of light that get switched on in humanity will help us evolve that much faster? Subject, yes. David, how did Jesus, Michael, and Raphael, who are here with us, see our progress? Is it satisfactory, or are we lagging in areas? Subject, long pause, they're all very happy and jovial and. David, so they're all happy and watching over us and doing their own thing as well. Is that right? Subject, they're here to help. David, is Jesus going to come back to help us? Will he be here for us but not in a physical form? Subject, he won't come back the way that he was, not in the physical form. But he's been here. He never left. David, is he going to stay until we all graduate? Subject, right. David, what does Jesus think about this session today with underscore? Does he feel like it's been helpful for her, and by sharing her words it might help others? Subject, there's work to be done. David, for underscore. Subject, yes. David, is underscore getting a better idea of what she needs to work on? Subject, long pause, yeah. David, will she find ways to improve going forward? Subject, long pause, yeah. He says I know, but there's no time left to do it. David, there's no time left? Subject, no more time left to question it, that I know. Trailing off. David, move on with what you already know. Subject, right. David, are important changes coming up for you that you're aware of, but you've been forestalling or putting off? Subject, definitely. David, you know it's time, you have to get moving and keep going, right? Subject, yes. David, does he feel like what I'm doing for you today is helpful? Subject, yeah, he was looking forward to it for a long time. David, he was what? Subject, looking forward to it for a long time. David, who was? Subject, Jesus. David, what for me to help you with this? Subject, right. 'Cause I don't do a good job of listening all the time when I. Soft laugh. David, are you rebellious sometimes or stubborn? Subject, sometimes. David, does he feel that the things you shared about his life are going to be helpful for others? Subject, yes, and Jesus says I should be more specific when I meditate and ask for him to come instead of just being open to anything. David, are there any other lives that you might want to explore next time? Any images pop in your mind? Subject, I just got an image of a dragon. David, that sounds interesting. I can't wait to explore that. It seems like you learned a lot today. Let's stop there and begin to wrap this up. I am going to count from 1 to 5, and each time I count up, you will become more and more awake, more and more awake. 1, waking up more and more, moving around. 2, more and more awake. 3, feeling yourself starting to move around, stretching and opening your eyes. 4, feel yourself waking up more and more. 5, now you're fully awake.